We are live here on Plus One EXP's Roll for Content channel. My name is Tony Vasunda. I'm Chief Alchemist here at Plus One EXP, which is a weird little brand that multi-classes in tabletop game design, beard, and skincare alchemy in the Bardic College of Content Creation. Our hope and desire is to help amazing designers find great players who love their games, and help amazing players find great designers whose games they can love. We do that in a lot of different ways, but my favorite one is actually sitting down with designers to talk about the work that they do, projects they have going on right now, and then kind of what influences them in the work they're doing, or just kind of unpacking something about the way that they think. Today we've got Luke joining us from the current Pirate Borg project that's live on Kickstarter, but who does a tremendous job thinking about naval warfare and a lot of different systems. But if you haven't yet gone over to ttrpg.link/pirateks to check out the Pirate Borg Kickstarter, I super want to encourage you to. Luke, why don't you tell people a little bit more about who you are, what you do, and where they can find you online?
Sure. My name's Luke Stratton. I go by Limithron on the interwebs. I started professionally in this space as a battle map artist at the beginning of pandemic, and almost exclusively focusing on maritime assets. I was running a 5e naval campaign, and I needed sloops and brigantines and frigates and ships of the line. So I ended up making them all in Photoshop. And then I was like, yeah, I think people might want these, and started a Patreon. And then fast forward to now, it's been about a year and a half, and it's going really, really well. I got addicted to Borg after we were taking a break. I was kind of getting overwhelmed from my prep as a DM and the Patreon. And we took a break where my players ran some systems for us. We did like a 5e Star Wars thing, which was fun with some ship combat. But then we did some just good old Borg, and it was the most fun we had the whole year. Just a lot of laughs, a lot of fun deaths, really great characters that were randomly generated. So I decided that I was going to make a zine to kind of adapt my pirate stuff to the Borg vibe.
That's awesome.
And then about 8 months later, I had turned it into this fully fleshed. I mean, I'm sitting at 120 pages right now, and that's some of the content is like, I'm not doing the Johann Femur 1-page thing. It's much more of the like Sean McCoy, like, I can't fit any more text on this page. So
Right. You're like, I don't know how to do that thing where you just put a little bit on the page. I'm going to do that thing where you put all of it on the page.
Yeah. I mean, dude, I have so much respect for that dude. I just can't do it. Like, I just want more on there. You know?
Yeah.
So.
I'm the kind of person who's like, hey, are there blank pages in this book? Then we did something wrong. What are we doing on the end papers? Like the hardback version for Down We Go, we can't put anything on the end papers. And so we had to add 4 more pages because the softbound has stuff on the end pages. And then somebody was like, why is there a 2-page difference in the amount of content for these books? I was like, well, the hardback's going to get 2 extra pages worth of content because I'm going to fill up those empty pages. Like I've got to add 4. So we're adding content.
Like, I couldn't be more happy that exists. Like, that femur page deserves to be in an RPG museum someday.
Yeah.
But like, as for my aesthetic as a creator, I just couldn't do it. So
no. I mean, like, and that's I think that's one of the beauties about seeing people do different pieces with this. This is really there are a number of standalone Borg games, but I feel like this is the third one that really kind of fills out, hey, this is the big, beautiful standalone hardback, stands alongside the initial printing that we've seen. Yours, Vast Grim by Brian Cullen, and then the original Borg, and all the other zines, all the other supplements, the 1-page pieces, the things that are just like, here, people will do things that are like, here's a femur, right? Or here's a beard, or here's a whatever. And those are all great, and I love all of those, and I love how many of them there are. But this is really a kind of reprocessed incarnation of that. And I love seeing these bigger, fuller takes on Borg starting to come out more consistently, and seeing what people can do with that. 'Cause it's a very interesting way to deconstruct it. But it's also interesting having talked to both you and Brian, and I'm sure we'll make plenty of Vast Grim comparisons as we go through.
Oh, sure.
Both of you, that was kind of the same thing. Like, we're in a place where you were like burned out, like having a hard time, struggling with whatever you all were playing, or not feeling inspired in some way, shape, or form, and then played Borg and like just watched it unlock something new. Brian's in the chat. Do it. Make the comparisons, Brian says.
Oh, yeah. I'll talk about it all day. I mean, like, look, I've played a lot of 5e. I have a lot of respect for 5e. I'm not a hater. I love that system. but I'm a pirate guy. Like I'm always running pirate campaigns. So I was doing like, if you remember E6, Epic 6, I was like level capping my characters at 6. Long rests were, a week. Like I was encouraging them to retheme their classes. And it was like, at some point it's like, well, we should just be playing a different RPG.
Right.
Like I'm leaving the player handbook so far behind, and none of these players are going to get to level 15. Half the spells are useless. And like when it comes to pirates, like you need gunpowder. Magic can be weird. Like you want to die, but you also want it to be really exciting. It was just the perfect ecosystem for that. And I'm sure Brian feels the same way.
Yeah. And we'll come back to that in a second, but I want to kind of just dive in a little bit more to your play history. So you're not a 5e hater. Was 5e,
No.
and we're like, I don't play 5e. We don't cover any significant amount of 5e on the channel. Like I will play 5e. It is what my child runs, to my great disappointment, most of the time when they play games. And I think it's a phenomenal lingua franca. I think there's been some great dialogues around that. We don't cover on it because we're like 5e is horrible and you're a bad person if you play it. We just think 5e gets tons of attention. But like where was your entry point into RPGs? So like, when did you start playing? How did you start playing?
Okay, I have a cool little story that I haven't shared yet, and I'll kind of dig into it. So like, gaming wasn't my like shtick growing up. It was music. My brother was like the kind of gamer, I mean, I always appreciated games, but I was always spending my time playing guitar, and then I got really big into DJing drum and bass. But whenever I checked in with my younger brother, he was always into gaming. Well, we went down to Florida when I was a kid. Like I was like middle school, super into like Nine Inch Nails and Nirvana and stuff. And my cousin was in college and he ran, I think it was West End Games, but he was running this Aliens campaign. But he was an incredible DM. And we went to this, he invited me to this college room, like classroom that they were using. And he had a big, the dry erase board and stuff. And we played this Aliens, like for me, it was a one shot, but it was like the end of their campaign, where I got to play a Marine and like I got to like drive a mock suit in and like attempt to like kill this queen. And it was like the most epic moment of my life that wasn't a music thing. And it became lore between me and my brother, like this epic alien session that we had, Well, like, I mean, I didn't really play again for any RPGs for years and years and years. And for my 30th birthday, I'm 38 now, my brother, who works in Hollywood, he did this really cool. Have you seen that Michael Douglas movie, The Game?
Yeah. Oh man. I weirdly love, I mean, like I love that movie more than that movie has a right to be loved. Like it's a good thriller, but like anytime it's on, I'll sit down and watch that movie.
Well, so like apparently when my brother and I were in high school, we watched The Game and I was like, dude, I would love it if somebody did that to me. So for my 30th birthday, my brother did, and he filmed it and it's on YouTube. You can look up Luke Stratton, The Game. It's pretty long, but he ended up making it's like a 30-minute thing. But to me, it was like, I mean, there were like Matrix phones showing up in FedEx envelopes. I got arrested by the cops. I did all this incredible journey I went on. So for his 30th birthday, I had to get him back. So he's always been really big into gaming. So
is your brother's name Tyler?
His name's Tyler. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I just want to make sure I grab the right link. I just dropped it in the chat.
Yeah. So Tyler, so for his 30th birthday, I planned this whole thing. Rather than filming it, we did this like basically making a fantasy role-playing game a reality. And I've always been obsessed with Lord of the Rings. So I bought the One Ring RPG, learned it, went and played a 5e session at a local game shop with my wife just to be like, how does this work? And then we did this thing where we like played a role-playing game that started with a real jousting session and like turned into this like alchemy escape room. And we like tied all these events together. But that One Ring session was like the beginning of me getting hooked,
That's awesome. I love that. I like that's real like Carlos the Dwarf moments, right? From Freaks and Geeks. I don't know if you ever watched that show where like the cool kid sits in with all them and they're like, what's your dwarf's name? And he's like Carlos. But by the end it's like this amazing transformative session of Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah. I mean
for them. And so
that's how it was for me. I mean, I didn't really get into it. And then like after that was, I guess 8 years ago or 5 years ago. Then I started playing around town and playing with from friends, and it just got the bug. And then when COVID hit, so my normal job before COVID, and still is, I'm a concert lighting designer. So I travel around doing lights for bands, and that totally went away when COVID showed up. So like I literally had all the time in the world. We didn't know when it was going to come back. So I started this Patreon, and then after like a month of it being full time, I was like, I think I can really push this. And now it's like it just consumed my life.
That's cool.
So.
And so I guess I know you mentioned it was because of like you like pirate stuff, but do you know where the fascination with like naval battles, pirates,
I mean,
stuff, like
dude,
where did that, why was that your kind of the thing you wanted to hit? Because it's one thing to be like, I like pirates. It's another thing to say like, hey, I'm going to write a bunch of naval combat rules for people to use in my game. Like, I think there's plenty of people who are like, okay, you're on a ship. Yeah, you shoot a cannon. Great. The cannon goes off, right?
Yeah.
There's no desire to say, hey, I want to codify all of this into something. What was kind of the drive on that for you?
Okay, well, I mean, I don't, I can't really explain my lifelong love of piracy. Pirates of the Caribbean ride as a kid is my earliest like memory of being fascinated with it. But I remember I was on the bandwagon before the movies came out. After the Pirates of the Caribbean movies came out, I used to play this game called Pirates of the Spanish Main, which is a WizKids pocket model game. Yep. You punch out these ships, and I was obsessed with this game.
So good.
I have so much of it. And the thing about that game is that the first set was like Pirates, English, and Spanish, and that was it.
I've never played that game. I bought dozens and dozens of the packs that you use to play that game.
Oh, great game. Well, the first ones were very historic inspired, but the later sets added these like cursed factions. And it's like, this is exactly what I want in this kind of setting. And I was pretty good at it. I ended up winning, like, if you can call it worlds at Gen Con. I won the like top tournament one year and won a whole bunch of them. But like that game stuck with me. And then I've been running these games in 5e, and there are no written in good ship mechanics for like, you guys have 2 ships and you're up against 3, and like, how do you want to get it? So I would like take these other systems. I would take Pirates of the Spanish Main, and then I want to give a shout out to Firelock Games. They make Blood and Plunder, which is a pirate historical miniatures game, and they had kickstarted right at the beginning of COVID the Kickstarter for Oak and Iron Shipped, which is a great, like, they made all these incredible minis, and for a naval combat game, it's rules light-esque. So I played that a bunch, and then I was like, I just got to make my own to do this. So in D&D, we can like fight at the sea, and it can come, unravel like it might, but not in a way where we're like, thinking about all these crazy sailing mechanics and having to explain, because war games take 3 hours in themselves. You want it to be fast,
right?
So the next, go ahead.
I don't know, and I think that's the tension. Like, a lot of people are like, when you say something about like naval warfare mechanics, I'm sure even including in the description of this video, there are people who are immediately interested, and everybody else is like, I don't have that amount of time, right? Like, that's a big thing. Like, and D&D already has the reputation, which I think is warranted, that combat can take a long time. And so when you add in that other layer, it feels like, okay, now what are we adding that's going to make this even longer? So yeah, keep on going.
Yeah, well, okay, so I'm doing this Patreon thing, and I'm making mostly, I mean, this is super COVID time, so nobody's playing in person. Everybody's moving to VTT. Foundry comes out, which is like, if you're not familiar with Foundry, like it's incredible in that you can draw in walls and open and close doors and add lighting. So as a lighting designer, I'm like going nuts, adding all these like cool lighting effects. But like, I basically built this Patreon up, and people are like asking like, how am I running my naval combat? So I just decided to write a guide for it. And I wrote this guide called Limithron's Guide to Naval Combat. And it's wildly exceeded my expectations as far as its popularity. I think maybe we'll kickstart it at some point, maybe do a second edition or something. But it's like, if you're playing Ghost of Saltmarsh, or you're in the like, there's a 5e naval campaign subreddit, like people are always throwing that. If you want a rules light one, use this one,
Right.
So it had like that proof of not only did it work for me, but other people liked it. And really quickly, the way that the core of that system is every ship has a captain, and every ship rolls initiative every turn, and the initiative is modified by how agile the ship is. And then at the top of the round, all the captains have to say what their ships are doing. They like pick actions. And then on that ship's turn, the players carry out those actions. And if like something changed and they don't want to do the actions, they can do something else, but it's not as good. So basically, every player in the game at the table can, I want to man the rigging, or I want to shoot this cannon and make that roll better. without it being like super crunchy,
Right. And it also builds in the reality of like, hey, when you're acting as a crew, things go well. When you start to deviate from what the rest of the crew's doing, it might be essential. You might need to do it. It might be in the good of the crew.
Yeah.
But like that means you're pulling away from the communal effort, which is a great mechanization of something that actually like it matters when you're looking at things like naval combat, how a ship works. Like it's not a one person does the thing and all of a sudden everything happens. It is a multi-step process to see those things come out.
And I think in a lot of 5e campaign, or not 5e, but just regular D&D campaigns or any role-playing game campaign, without those mechanisms there, it's really easy to just be like, well, what does the captain want to do? We do that,
Right.
Well,
and that's we were looking at Through the Void, like that was a big thing. Like when we were starting to look at ship rules, I just asked like what are everybody's favorite spaceship rules. I wouldn't even talk about naval warfare or anything else like that. And overwhelmingly everybody came down to I like the ones where I know I can do something every single turn. I don't like the ones where the pilot is the only one who really does things, or there's like a pilot and a gunner, but everybody else is just kind of sitting there for however long. Like there's nothing for them to do. And that's all of a sudden as a player, you're like, great, no matter how long this is, if it's 5 minutes or if it's 5 hours, I'm out for that period of time, right? I'm not, I'm like, boring, go, like, good job, team. Like, it's just, it's not engaging. And so
I think another really big influence for me on this is Sea of Thieves, which is a really, really fun computer video game. And Sea of Thieves, you don't have a crew. The crew is you and your friends. You can only have up to 4. And like when you're in combat, like one guy's like, quick, we got to turn. Another guy's like at the helm. Another guy's got to reload the cannons. And, oh, you got to go bail water. It's like, well, that's what I wanted in an RPG. So that's really what this is trying to mimic. So the idea is that there is always something you can do. If you could always go repair, you could make the ship go faster. You could shoot. So, I mean, I'd say that there are at least 4 core actions you're going to want to take every turn. So if you got 4 or 5 players, you're golden.
Yeah, and, I mean, to this point, like we used the stripped down Merc Borg version of your naval rules that are in Pirate Borg in our actual play. Like it runs very smoothly. It felt very good. Like and the combat didn't take that long, and it was a mix of like, hey, everything from we're going to fire some cannons back and forth, we're going to maneuver around a little bit, to like, hey, some ghost pirates are swinging over onto the ship, and now we're going to do boarding action and other stuff. Like that was, I mean, it flowed very smooth. It felt very integrated. It worked. I think at the end of the day, like, and I think this it emerges in a lot of OSR and old school systems a lot more when it feels like you're just layering on a procedure that automatically matches the vibe of the overall system, where it's where it doesn't feel like, okay, now we're doing this totally other thing, which I feel like a lot of naval combat, especially with miniatures heavy stuff, can feel that way. When the miniatures are now all of a sudden just like, hey, no, this is just for positioning and representing what direction you're heading and how this works. It really, you're still just making these 4 or 5 choices. That's a really great feel. And it compartmentalizes a lot of what I think Merc Borg and OSR systems do, where there's like, hey, you can do a few things. Some of them not very well, a couple of them really well. Make a choice for which of those things you want to do and commit to it. Don't pick from this extensive list of a million options that you might have. But being able to see those connections, being able to make those tactical choices felt really good. And even like it, and I know we didn't get into this part of it, but it does scale out where you're like, you just give everybody their own ship, and all of a sudden they're going to now be commanding a fleet. And that's a very cool feel also, where it's all of a sudden now we're all captains of our own ships. We've all got our own crews, but I still don't have to manage, hey, here's 4 NPCs that we have to go back and forth. You're now just making ship level decisions. But it felt very much like, okay, these are like I'm in a bigger character. Exactly, I'm still making choices. And that's the vibe I want. Like, and that's that. I loved how well that flowed in our actual play of it. So like, I really enjoyed it.
Great.
I
mean, like, if even on the character sheet, let's see if I have one here. So this isn't folded, but like here, I'll fold it real quick. So this is going to be the front of the A5 sheet, and then the back this is all for your ship. So the idea is like, you guys could all track your stats. They're very similar to your character stats. Or if you level up and take a couple ships, like give your players a couple ships. And then when their ship gets blown up, either the character dies or they got to get rescued from the water, or the Kraken shows up. Like by taking out that, like, when you're in 5e, like you worked for so long to buy this ship and you put all the upgrades into it and your character's been alive for 30 sessions. Like you're as a DM, like you don't want to just sink that on a random encounter.
Yeah.
But when you have a mechanism to like make a new character really quickly, or the ships are they only have 20 hit points because this dice system is scaled up, it's really easy to be like, that ship's gone now. You rescue that guy, right. But yeah, sorry guys, come easy go,
Yeah. We and like it's one of the things that there's also like the economics of ship stuff, which I mean we didn't explore at all. I don't know how much is in but like the especially when you're dealing with like NPC crew members and other stuff like that, some of the economies of the way pirate ship works, there's a lot of psychology that goes into it. There's a lot of intentional choices that get made. There's a lot of democracy that's involved with it. Yeah. That's very, very interesting and works a lot of the way that like party politics oftentimes work. Where you might have, there are some people who are holding back or getting more. Some people are getting like there's all those types of things that can play into if you want to engage in those tensions. And the economies of ships are always one of the most interesting points. Whether ships are disposable or not is one question. How the finances of ships are managed, because pirates, you go steal a ship, right? Like you might find you might end up in a ship that you didn't pay any money for, but if you want to build a ship, that's an expensive endeavor. And yeah, go nuts. Like figure out what that cost point is and go after it. But there's so many different approaches you can take to how that works that you can scale up or down really easily based on the economies of your game. And like it's really funny. Like I'm somebody who I love getting money for my character. As a GM, I'm just like, who cares? Like
you make enough money
or you don't, right?
Like they're like, how much money do we have? And I was like, you realize that like when you just took that other ship, I just made up a number for how much was in the hold. Like
right.
They have exactly as much money as I want them to have at any moment. So I understand your point.
The thing about money to the ships to me is they can also really signify like debt or obligation. Like for me, it's like, yeah, I'm going to tell you how much money you owe to somebody for having this ship. That's over your head until you get it paid off. And that's more narratively interesting to me than the actual money that's attached to it, right? Like, is it going to be 5 sessions? Is it going to be 6 sessions? If you break something, is another one. Or are you going to abandon the ship and steal another one? But you're still going to owe that debt, even if you just abandon the ship. So what are you going to do?
You're on the line for the pirate lord. You owe him for that. He's like the Don.
Yeah, and so no, like I said, I thought it worked really well. But those are a lot of the things, and I think. Again, whether it's space, whether it's pirates, whether it's, those are the things that are fascinating to me about the naval aspect of things. And again, come up very specifically when you're exploring the pirate themed realities of things. Sure. So, like I said, I've super enjoyed getting to look at some of your stuff. And you do have for people who do play 5e, you've got the zine in there. That's a 5e, like compatible addendum for this, right?
Yeah, that's for the monsters that are in the book. Basically, there's so much in this book that's really more of like a naval or a maritime toolkit. I mean, I think we're at 70 plus tables with all these locations that aren't really system dependent. Right. And I have so many patrons that play 5e that I'm like, yo, check this book out, check out this other way to do it. And if you're afraid about that, add on this little zine with stats for all of them, so you can use this in your normal thing. But I think what will happen is people are going to get this, and players are going to look through and they're like, "Dude, let's play this!" Like, look at these classes. Like,
because it's like such a great entree because they're like, "Oh, these numbers already make sense to me. Like, I already know what a +1 kind of signifies." And now they're going to be like, "Wait, why is my character so horrible and bad and dying all the time?"
But DM, I have 1 hit point. Is that correct?
Is that right?
Like, yes, it is. Yeah.
So that's fine. Your next guy might have more.
Yeah, exactly.
And but no, like I think like it's such a great way to draw people, and Mork does such a good job of getting people who have only ever played 5th edition to play another game and experience it. It's not for everybody, just like any game. But it's a really enjoyable one to explore, and I think it's going to be a really attractive theme. Let's talk about the setting a little bit. Like so you've got kind of the dark Caribbean ideal, but there's not a setting per se for Pirate Borg, right? It's a little bit more of a generate as you go.
The project started as 2 books. I was going to do a big setting book called The Dark Caribbean, kind of really inspired by The Dark of Hot Springs Island, which is like the holy grail for me as far as OSR books are concerned. That book's not a setting book, but I was like, look, I'm going to do a 5e book and I'm going to do a Mork Borg book so that people can just buy either one, whichever one they want. Well, when I got into making the Mork Borg one, the Mork, you need all these other things to make pirates work. Like you really need new classes. Like the esoteric hermit could work in a pirate setting, but having a buccaneer just makes more sense.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. No.
And another thing that really happened is that the design aesthetic is like totally a different thing. So I was really making 2 books. So then I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to shelve the Dark Caribbean book. I'm just going to make this Pirate Borg book. And at that point, I took out the setting. I was like, Mork Borg players aren't going to want to hear about Nassau and Port Royal, and they're going to want it so they can play in Necrobell or wherever, what's the Endless Sea, but then as I went further along, I'm like, well, look, there are galleons and there aren't really galleys. There's a buccaneer and a swashbuckler. Like the setting is baked, like there's 100 backgrounds, like
right.
It's baked in whether I like it or not. So I added it back in. There's only 2 pages of setting in the book, and there's a quick little like blurb about how when the people showed up, the Caribbean was empty and there was nobody there. And it was tranquil, and then the undead came out of the sea.
Yeah.
And then there's a second page, which I think is kind of like a teaser for this next book I'm going to do, Dark Caribbean, which is like it's kind of like the calendar of Necrobell, where you can roll a D66 to get an event that happens, but it's structured more like if you're familiar with Pound of Flesh, the kind of story arcs that happen. So there are 6 arcs with 6 chapters each that you could play through in order in a long campaign to kind of explore what happens. Like the first thing that happens is that Port Royal is destroyed in an earthquake and nobody knows why. Well, that really happened. But in the Dark Caribbean, it probably happened from some form of evil magic,
Right.
And then it works all the way up to the world is destroyed in a giant, maelstrom or whatever. So the setting is there if you want to use it, or just steal from the book. Like that's the whole point, is you can use this stuff however you want. But my background is that like Pirates of the Caribbean, magic, but not like from wizards, like from weird things you find in temples,
Yeah, and let's talk about that. You did some really unique things with the magic, specifically. Like again, you have some comparable but different classes, as well as just some wholly bespoke stuff. But let's talk specifically about magic, because you did something significantly different. There are things like oh man, why can I not think of it all of a sudden? I want to say tributes in Mork Borg.
Do you mean like omens?
Omens. No, sorry.
Oh yeah.
Tributes are there are things like the normal spells that you cast in Mork Borg, but you added in relics also too, as 2 different kind of ways to engage in magic within the system. Talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Okay. Well, so I love the magic setting in Mork Borg. I want to be clear about that. I didn't change it out of dislike. It just fits that setting perfectly. There's no magic classes. Some are maybe better at luck. Maybe you have a high presence score, but basically you find a scroll, you try to read it. If you read it, it goes off. If you don't,
scroll was the word I was trying to say a second ago and could not remember for the life of me.
Yeah. I mean, and that's great for that setting. In a medieval setting, you open up an old chest or find a tome and there's a scroll and you read it. Great. But like, this is the Dark Caribbean or whatever, this is Wild Islands. Like there's no English written into books hidden places. It just doesn't work for the setting. The other big difference that I have with Pirate Borg versus regular Mork Borg is that gunpowder is a huge part of the game. It takes 2 rounds to reload a gunpowder weapon, so your players will get smart and collect a couple of them. But when you have presence be the stat for shooting and for magic, people who have low presence really have not good options, especially if they didn't roll. You're playing with random classes and they roll a non-melee class. Like they're going to be potentially not having fun.
Yeah, and there's a big difference damage-wise when you're whirring a sling around and when you're shooting a black powder musket, right?
Yes,
like,
a sling and like my weapons are all like, I mean, like a musket does like 2d6.
Yeah,
and you give your players, it's called Devil's Luck in Pirate Borg, but the omens where you can re-roll or do max damage, like you can one-shot a lot of the monsters in the bestiary just with Devil's Luck, So I branched out to a 5th stat, and I got this idea from Johan and the Cyborg thing, or Christian, I should say, because they added a new technology stat for Cyborg. And I was like, that's like, I guess I didn't really know I was allowed to do that. Obviously you can do anything you want, but I was like, new stat. So I made a new stat called Spirit, which represents your ability to tap into the arcane. So magic users have a different stat that's their bump instead of presence, which is still used for shooting.
Yeah.
So then there are two forms of magic that you can access in Pirate Borg. One is called, what you mentioned, relics, ancient relics, and the other are these arcane rituals. And I was really inspired by the black hack on this system. So basically, relics are items that you hold that they're basically kind of like spells that if you're talking about like the black hack. You can use the relic, the magic happens no matter what, and then afterwards you test to see if you can use it again or if it breaks. So this is they're really great to be like, oh, I found this magic compass, give it to the barbarian guy, which is called a brute. He'll be able to use it, but he might break it afterwards because he's not
at least once.
Yeah, at least once. You know they're going to go off. But then there's the other side of the coin. The analog here to BX is these are like the cantrips, level 1 spells. Those are the relics. Then the like level 2 up to some of these are probably like level 8 or 9 spells are the arcane rituals. You can't start with these. You can gain one randomly when you level up, or you have to up to the DM find them.
Or you have to sacrifice a goat and pour its blood over your body.
Oh, yes.
Gary
Please,
the goat. Gary the goat no longer with us.
Gary the goat. Oh, that was a great moment for Mark.
Pour out one of Gary's blood for Gary the goat, played by Brian.
Thank you, Brian, for that lovely memory, by the way, from our actual play. But that's the idea. So basically these spells, they don't work unless you pass a test. And if you fail at all, you roll on a mishaps table. Now I don't have it in there yet, but I'm going to work in like a modifiers section. So if you sacrifice a goat and use blood, you'll get a better roll. You'll get a modifier to the roll. Or if you take a week to do it instead of 5 minutes, that's kind of the idea. But it's not just like in Core Mork Borg, you roll a 1 and then you have to roll on the mishap table. This is if you fail. Yeah. So and the results are bad. I mean, some of them are like you die, the Reaper comes for your soul or all kinds of cool mechanics are working.
And then when you kill the Reaper, now you have to deal with the fact that no one's dying anymore, and that's the next stage of the adventure. And like I said, it played really tremendously too. It's always one of those things where sometimes when folks like, oh, I'm going to add this stat, you're like, okay, what's it doing in the game? But because of the way you've shifted magic over, it makes it easier for everyone to use a little bit. But then if you want to really focus in on being one of those classes that does this, you're playing a high risk class that even as you level up, you're still running incredible risks with what happens. And so it is interesting to see how some of the lethality of Mork Borg transfers into other settings. The magic system the backlash of that keeps the lethality in play even at higher levels, because in Core Mork Borg, you can get up a lot higher. If you get up higher in level, if your character does not die, you can start to feel a little bit powerful. You can still get totally torn up. But both in Pirate Borg with the magic system and in Vast Grim with the amount of damage that a lot more of the weapons do, the lethality comes through really, really, really strong. And there's not as many ways to protect yourself against it as there are in the core stuff. And I thought that was a super great twist on some of those pieces. Now, like I said, if people have questions out there right now, if you have questions about Mork Borg, about the pirate stuff, about naval combat, any of that stuff, feel free to drop it in the chat or the comments wherever you're watching. If you're watching later, feel free to drop it into the comments and we'll try to get an answer for you. But you're building this project up for the last couple of years, for a while intentionally, for initially just kind of like, hey, I love this stuff, I want to get into it. And now you've launched. You're 10 days into the campaign. You are fully funded, and then some of your original $3,000 goal. You are sitting at a little over $95,000 right now. What's that like? What's it like?
It's weird, man. I'm not gonna lie. I did not. I think the biggest thing is that it's cool that I know people are gonna play this game. I mean, we have over 2,000 backers now. It's I think for so long, before a couple days before, I remember being like, none of my patrons are really seem like they care. I was classic mopey creator. People aren't hyped about this. Nobody. I mean, other than you, you and Dicebreaker, nobody hit me up before the campaign, like replied to my like jillion press releases. You know, I had one guy who found the project and messaged me directly. So I was like, man, is this even, do people even care? So it's really gratifying for it to be like, no, people are going to play this game. Like, this is going to be the thing that happens on some people's weekend nights for at least the next couple of years, you know? So I think that's the coolest part, you know?
I always love seeing it. I think there's also always the temptation. Like you did a really like phenomenal job. I just dropped on the $45 level, which I think if you're going to go back it, you can back it at whatever level your budget allows, or if you're not interested in backing it, I would still encourage people to go share it. I just upped at the $45 level because I do think that's like the level to back at if you're gonna go in on this game, because you get the digital, you get the physical, but you get the character sheet pad also, and it's that double-sided character sheet that you were talking about. You have the ship information on one side. It's absolutely gorgeous and tremendously well laid out piece, but you've also got some higher levels on there, and I think you've done a really good job of avoiding a ton of stretch goals that are going to bloat this because you already had so much content ready to go in it. What are some of the things, having exceeded your expectations, that you're still kind of looking forward to in the campaign?
Well, I'm really excited about the 100K stretch goal, which when we inked it, and when I say we, I either mean Alan, who is my like very part-time employee who helps me with social media and stuff, or usually my brother. I make my brother do a lot of my think tanking with me. I'm like, if we put this at 100K, like I really want this to happen. So at 100K, we're going to do a 4-fold. So I guess that's going to be a 3 maybe. It's a 4-folded treasure map of the island in the back of the adventure, but it won't have any labels on it. And it'll have a bunch of points of interest, as I call them, in the treasure map industry that I partake in. That aren't in the book. So the idea will be you can fold out this big map, hand it to your players as part of the adventure or as whatever you want, and it's going to come shrink wrapped into the book. Everybody's going to get a copy. I'm like really excited that it seems like that's about to happen, given 20 days left and it's only a few $1,000s away. So I'm very excited about that. I'm going to be at Gen Con and at Origins. I'm actually going to be displaying with Brian, or at least have some stuff at Brian's booth with Vastgrim. I'm really excited to hang out with him, meet everybody there, run games for it. I'm just excited for the future of it, man. It's a fun project, and I'm really excited to share it with people. So
I'm thrilled by everything I've seen for it, and like I said, getting to play. And again, it's always one of those questions whenever you add in an element, and like I said, it's something we were very considerate of when we were creating ship rules for space stuff. Is like, look, I just don't want these to suck. Like I don't, like I want them to feel good. I want them to feel natural. I want everybody at the table to feel like they have skin in whatever's happening, unless they choose not to. Like when we played, when we did a 6-week Vastgrim actual play over on Infinite Black's channel as the game was launching, which was just a tremendous blast to play it. Like my character was basically the cleaning bot that came with the ship, right? It was a Crichton who ended up getting darker and darker and more lethal and had galaxy-ending power locked in his head by the end of the campaign. But it was tremendous. But lots of times when we were flying around, like my character did nothing, had to be prompted to like respond. But literally everybody else would make agility rolls, and I just tell Brian, like, can I just make a toughness roll? Because as I get knocked around and fly around as we're doing all these maneuvers, because I'm not strapping down, I'm just going about my normal business, right? Like players might opt to do that, and that's great because it was fun for me. But everybody else actually had something they were able to do during combat, and I think that level of engagement is the thing that most rules miss. So having played them, I just want to, like, it was such a cool thing to see in action, along with, again, the whole the additional setting and all the other kind of pieces added in. I think it's just been such a tremendous endeavor, and I'm not surprised at all that people responded as well as they did do it. I love the quote that you have on there from
Pella.
Yeah, from Pella, who's like, as soon as we finished writing Mork Borg, I wanted to hop over and start creating a pirate one, and now that work has essentially been done for them. And that's such a great quote.
Pella, he was so nice to me, and I asked him if he wanted to contribute at all. There's 2 monsters he's written that they're awesome. They are very Pella, very Mork Borg, which is perfect. But it's just, I mean, the 2 of them making this like third-party license, like, really, I just can't thank them enough, because it's really been such an inspiration for me. So
Yeah.
thanks, guys. I guess.
No, it's like I said, it's always cool to see that kind of stuff in the community. It's one of the things I love about the third. It's one of my favorite things about third party communities. Like people will talk about like, oh, why do you do license? Why do you do this other stuff? And it's not about restriction. It's about how do we create explicit permission and guide what comes next within the community. And Mothership, like you mentioned, does it tremendously well. Mork Borg does it tremendously well. You know, we've got a ton of games out there that do a tremendous job. I'm not saying you just can create stuff here, or creating weird ecosystems that only reinforce their own profitability, that's another conversation about other systems.
Oh, what? We know companies like that.
You know, whatever. There may be a few, but that are very intentional about saying how can we help other creators grow and build and encouraging that third party scene. And I think Pirate Borg, Vasgrim, and all the stuff we've seen come out of Mork Borg are great articulations of that as people, again, build, flex, grow, and change the way the core system works, but in a way that still seems like if you want your folks to show up in the Dark Caribbean as they get up to higher level and all of a sudden have to start encountering new weird stuff, you can absolutely slide them from 100%. One campaign to the next easily. You know, worms from outer space could all of a sudden land in the middle of your islands from Vasgrim.
I mean, anybody who's seen Sphere knows that any good deep dive can always result in an alien craft from far from the future. Like you could totally smash the two worlds together, you know?
And so I love seeing that kind of stuff come into play. And again, we didn't actually do a ton of comparison, but like, it's really funny. One of my first questions to Brian after we did the actual play on the channel was like, how are ship rules going to work? And his answer was like, I have no idea. So one of my favorite things is just like, not that maybe not no idea. He wasn't interested in that part of the system. It was the universe, the themes, and the other world buildings of sci-fi. And it was like, yeah, we're gonna have somebody else who cares way more about that, figure that part out. And so,
I mean, you know,
seeing you come from the other end is really cool.
Yeah, sci-fi, you can have a couple different camera angles, so to speak, as far as the kind of game you're trying to play. You know, like there's no ship combat in Alien.
Right.
But like it's pirates, man. Like you're gonna
want to fire
drive a ship around and shoot a like that's gonna, if that doesn't happen, you're not playing a pirate game, at least from like a pop culture standpoint. So
yeah, no, and like I said, those are a lot of the things I think are really great about the theme of this, because it's one of those things like. And that is like, okay, great. Like, cause you could have spaceships that just don't fight each other. Like, and then the question is, do we ram this person? Are we putting on AV suits and hopping out across the void to try to board their ship? Like what a lot of the same things you might do in a pirate setting, but weapons are no longer the question, or how pilot. It's like, how do we replace that aspect of it with something else? Pirate ships, you're like, no, but I want to do that, right? Like I want to do that, and I want to drive around the edge of a maelstrom, or that's about to suck me down into the depths of the sea. So what do I need to roll, right? Like that's the question that you're going to be asking.
And in 5e, I mean, you can go into the maelstrom, sure, but in Pirate Borg, it's like, dude, you want to go in there. You're like, you want to see what's down there,
And you're like, yeah, sure. Is our ship going to get destroyed? Are we going to crash? Are we all going to have to roll new characters? Possibly, but like the 3 or 4 people who pull themselves out of the wreckage at the bottom of the ocean and are now dealing with whatever's down there are going to have a blast, and we're going to be playing them still. And that's again one of the best parts about the system. So always had to ask the question when something's successful. It's the worst question to ask the creator, but you always have to.
Sure.
Pirate Borg's funded. It's going to continue to fund. It's going to be a great project. It's coming out. What do we have coming up next?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Patreon's still going. I'm going to be putting out maps this month, despite all the stuff that's going on. I think as far as the next big project, I really want to, per Brian's recommendation, actually, I think I am going to do a third-party license for Pirate Borg. I don't really think I need to. Like, I think people can just make stuff for it, but I think I'm going to do it to encourage it. And that's going to hopefully lead into a Discord server-wide West Marches campaign. The idea is that we're going to track the Dark Caribbean on Legend Keeper, which is a really incredible world building website where DMs will be able to come in and like say, hey, we went to this island. Here's what's here. Like there'll be a few key pins on the map, like Nassau and Port Royal and Havana, but there are so many islands, and even uncharted islands that DMs will hopefully be able to do whatever they want with. Cool. And then that's going to hopefully lead into, not hopefully, that'll lead into the Dark Caribbean, which I don't really exactly know the format of that project. I want it to be A5, big, thick book, but it may be a larger format. It may be system agnostic. It may have 5e and OSR versions. I don't really know yet, but that's going to be a giant setting book with hand-drawn maps of every island in the Caribbean, major NPCs, factions, treasure, that kind of stuff. So that's like what's on the near,
that's awesome,
lens or window or whatever.
Awesome. No, like I said, my big thing is always with people, that's great to know, but also just it's okay to just focus on getting out what needs to get out.
I mean, we're talking next year, not
right.
The other thing though is that, like, with the third party stuff, like, I would love to see people make island pamphlets or zines.
Yeah,
like, here's this. I mean, you use it in any game, but especially use it in Pirate Borg. Like, here is a place that you can take your players to. It's got monsters and NPCs and all that kind of stuff.
Let me take a moment to shout out a project that came across my stuff today. So we're doing the Together We Go jam right now, which is for our house OSR system, which converts really well to Mork Borg back and forth. It's very easy to transfer things between the two systems. But there is somebody popped up a naval supplement earlier today. And it's very, very cool. And I think it's the Islands of Forever. I'll drop a link in the chat in just a second.
Yeah.
But it's a very cool, like, 2-page thing, but like the way that you've done the island setup for this and other pieces, it would be very easy for people to do the same kind of thing. Hey, do a pamphlet island, do a 2-page island. If you want to do a longer adventure that's 20 or 30 pages across, like, do it. There's it's so easy to create within the Mork Borg system as long as you sit down and take the time to do it.
The monsters basically have one stat that matters, and that's like how much damage they do. It's like
Trash Rama down in the chat says that would be awesome to lead to a Pirate Borg atlas, just a third-party compendium of just like, hey, here's a whole bunch of islands.
Oh yeah. I mean, I have a update planned for the backers that's going to show off. I mean, you've got Corpse Wave Cove and Fisk Borg and Temple of the Kraken God. Like, there's a bunch of already existing things that would work well. So I'm collecting all those. I'd love to see them all, end up on Ex Libre or whatever. I mean, they're already up there, but you know what I'm saying.
Right. No, I get you. Well, it's been tremendous to chat. If anybody has any questions, go ahead and toss them in. We'll talk. I've got one more thing I want to ask you about, but before we do that, just so everybody knows, we do have a ton of amazing actual plays coming up this week. Today is a double stream day, which means this evening at 8 p.m. Eastern time, I'm going to be sitting down with a couple of amazing folks, Adira Slattery, my good friend Kirby Franklin, also known as Disaster Tourism Online, and then Bats is going to come run Sean Richter of Orbital Intelligence's Crapland 2 Troika setting for us. I'm super excited about it. It is like weird suburban bizarre adventures, and we're going to do some of them tonight, so come back for that. It's one of the most interesting Troika settings that's ever been made, and if you know Troika at all, that's such a high level of praise. So come back tonight, check out what that's about. Tomorrow, we're actually going to be playing one of the games that I am most excited to play all year long. I have got to play it a couple times in person, but we're going to be playing it on stream with Jay Dragon, and that's Yaziba's Bed and Breakfast, which is a slice of life RPG. You play through chapters in the book. Different chapters have different moods, and that affects the mechanics that you use, and use a set cast of characters at this kind of enchanted bed and breakfast filled with a regular cast of characters. They just launched their actual play today that Jeff Stormer did that includes voices like Brennan Lee Mulligan and Matt Mercer playing a couple of different pieces of this game. So
nice.
Tomorrow we are playing along with a whole host of other amazing actual play people, but those are the two that I know the vast majority of people whose name will recognize. The other ones are tremendously gifted, great people in the scene also too. But we're going to be playing that tomorrow on stream. I'm very excited to play that. We're going to play 2 chapters to give you a little bit of taste of what that all is about. And then he has to find the right one. On Sunday, we're playing Justicar, which is a GM-less game of courtroom conflict. You can do things like My Cousin Vinny, or any of your favorite courtroom dramas from TV, both heavy and serious or light and comedic. That's by Nevin Holmes. It's going to be on Sunday afternoon. We're also going to do that one two parts. It'll be like 11 a.m. part 1, setup and establishing things, building the case, and then the actual courtroom drama will be in part 2 in the afternoon, with a little break in between for all of us. And then on Monday night, we're back up again with our ongoing Solar Side in extremis adventure that we're playing through on Mondays all month long. The last thing I want to shout out, if you want to support us right now, you can do that by clicking any of the buttons down below wherever you're watching to help support us on Ko-fi. You can head over to itch to buy any of our games. But what I'd love to have you do is actually head over to itch and check out ttrpg.link /TWJam. That's the Together We Jam project. It's people creating games using our third-party license for our house OSR system. Like I mentioned, there's a nautical supplement that dropped earlier today. There's also been ones that are inspired by Primal. Somebody just dropped an Avatar based one. There's some other cool like post-apocalyptic Fallout ones. It's a phenomenally simple modular OSR system with beautiful narrative elements that emerge as you play. But there's a lot of great creators over there creating micro games in there that you can pick up. A lot of them are pay what you want. Head over to ttrpg.link /TWJam to check out all that great stuff. So before we head out, again, I want to encourage people to go over to ttrpg.link /pirateks to check out the Kickstarter. It's linked in the description of the video. But so Luke, I know we weren't going to talk about classes a lot because you talked about them and a lot of other great things. But what is your favorite class out of all the classes? Like when you sit down to play, what do you hope you end up rolling up on the backgrounds for the classes?
I mean, the sorcerer is cool. Just because I've always been into the kind of magic side of things. Wizard Gandalf is my all-time favorite, you know. But I think that like no good game of Pirate Borg is complete without a swashbuckler, which the closest analog would be a fighter, but this is like, you know, cutlass in one hand, flintlock in the other, swing over to the ship. That being said, the new stretch goal classes are so much fun. We did an actual play the other day where a character died and he rolled a foul for his second character, which is like a cursed chicken that knows magic. And dude, that like if you're like, I don't want my players to die, you haven't played with these optional classes, like play them every other time. So much fun.
That's awesome. So give us a taste of those ones. What are those stretch goal
so
classes?
There's two classes. One is called Haunted Soul. And that's the class where if you want to play a zombie or a skeleton or a vampiric pirate, they're kind of like functionally they're a lot like races. You roll one of these, like one of them is Eldritch Mind, which gives you access to a relic immediately, and then you re-roll for a normal class. That's a fun one. That's like very what you would expect if you were having really weird classes. But the Tall Tale is you can be a mermaid. You could be the foul, a crocodile, a monkey, and there's the Aquatic Mutant, which is where you end up being like a shark man or octopus man. Or they're really flavorful and really fun. It'll take your game to a wacky spot, but I guarantee you like. I mean, in this game with Victory Condition Gaming and Doug, like the guy who ended up as a chicken, like they made him the captain of the ship at the end of the adventure. Like
that's awesome.
You can't make that stuff up. I mean, I guess we are making it up, but you know.
But you gotta watch how it happens in play, and that's the most
it's so much fun. So
someone says a haunted soul ? In the chat with SOLE being the spelling, and I say to that, delightful but also boo times doorway. That is a phenomenally excellent pun. We all just took psychic damage. And since our characters only had 1 hit point each,
roll for class.
So if you can now subscribe to our channel. We did switch over to affiliate a year after we were able to, because I love to run games and play games, but you know, a lot of the other work we do with game design, my day job, other stuff like that supports the channel. As we bring more voices onto the channel, we want to make sure that we're able to support them financially also, like Armanda, who's doing our new solo actual plays and reviews, other people who are coming on to do extended series. We would love to be able to pay them something. Not only do you help support Tristan, our editor, and Johnny, whenever our graphic designer, whenever you help support the stream of the channel, but you're also helping us be able to take care of other people who are voices that you see regularly on the stream as we hit different levels of support. You can do that over on Ko-fi or subscribe right here on Twitch. Either one is great if you have a preference. But Luke, thank you so much for coming on today. Can't wait to play some more Pirate Borg, and we'll look forward to that. This has been Prestige Class with Luke Stratton, talking about naval combat and grimdark fantasy. And until next time, class is dismissed. Thanks, everybody.